Hi, everybody. It's Sarah May Bates. This is Help Me Be Me. And I am talking about you are what you believe, but really the idea is prompting life. And by prompting, I mean, we prompt chats in an AI interface and we get this response back. But in many ways, that's the way reality works too. We prompt with our thoughts. We are creating the world with the expectations we have, with the thoughts we generate. And I mean that in a literal sense. So, this is an episode about coming from intentionality versus what I would call self centered fear. And I say self centered not because we're intending to be self centered, but because fear very much blocks out the big picture. It makes us very myopic and very um, we regurgitate our own feedback and then just get trapped in like a false reality. And it reduces us, it makes us defensive, it makes us overly controlling. It's very damaging in how it guides us through life. And so, all of that said, this is about how we choose to enter into any situation and ideally not coming from fear. So, being aware of that factor, being aware of the power of intentionality and examining areas where fear might be blocking love and truth. I think we get really clouded energetically when we're in that fear state. And we in turn create situations with other people. So I'll start by asking, what is your goal? Like in a very simplified, like what's your brand kind of thing? Like what's your intention in how you want to move through the world in like a global way? Everything will come from that. Just give that some thought for a second. For me, I want to enter the world from a place of lightness. I want to be inspiring. I want to be inspired. I want to come from love. I want to elevate other people, make them feel inspired, make them feel empowered and happy. I also want to be funny. I want to be joyful. I want to connect. I want to be tolerant. Think through all of those things for yourself. And I think when we can recall that just for a moment before we enter into a situation, no matter what it is, everybody else feels that and it alters the outcome of any conflict, of any challenging situation. It is completely translated through your energy, through your words, through the way other people receive you. It's very pivotal. Just that simple thing is having an intention. The other thing that this episode is about is the things that we discarded about ourselves at younger points in life where we were somehow discouraged, blocked, wounded by fear of loss. This happens at a lot of really important stages of development when we say, I'm just not going to care about that anymore. And we like choose to discard a part of ourselves that's very true and very meaningful. And oftentimes it's because it hurts too much to want that thing, or we have some sort of wound that has been caused by loving that thing or caring about that thing. And one thing that we can do as we get older and we grow healthier and stronger and more open is we can notice those things we discarded about ourselves and reclaim them and really like take apart and digest that moment in time and what caused us to do that. Because it doesn't mean that that's not part of you still. It's still part of who you are. So to pick it back up and reclaim it is, first of all, thrilling and wonderful. And then you also remember your whole picture, like who you are. It's something I've been doing recently, and it's very exciting. It's kind of like a little bit of a mourning process where you think, oh, I let go of this thing about myself because of all these factors, but now I have access to them again. And there's no like time limit on those things. And what happens is you feel deeply whole, grounded, like yourself again. It's not like a false self. So, this is another kind of epiphany, hopefully, epiphany episode in that it's based on a personal epiphany I've had, but I'm hoping it'll give you one and just really focused around the power of what we say to ourselves and what we expect, what we intend. So, when you are walking into the next conversation you have today, I invite you to really stop before you walk into that room and think about your North Star. Think about your intention as a person. Whatever it is, just gently say it to yourself. My goal is to inspire, uplift, be kind, to connect, to be funny. Next time you're entering a conversation, just really tune into who am I? What is my goal? So, with that, there are three parts in this episode: the what, the why, and the how, the tools. Part one, the what. Priming, prompting life. I think thoughts are prompts, and you are telling yourself a story about what will be, and then you are actualizing it. So you are your attention to the next time a negative thought pops into your head about your state of life, about what you're doing wrong, about what will be. Notice that that is its own like version of a hobby. It's its own version of, I like to call it masturbation because it's like basically very, very self-indulgent time spent procrastinating basically. It's a very indulgent practice of now I get to ruminate. I'm going to play my rumination game. And it's its own practice. So as soon as you can recognize it for what it is, in the moment we think we are predicting and controlling a future outcome, but in reality what we're doing is playing this little game of fear masturbation where we're just like hanging out, talking to ourselves about ourselves and going in a big loop again and again and again. So as soon as you notice that thing is popping up, like a negative story is beginning, that's when you opt out. And the way I like to tell people to opt out is you jump into any action that is in any shape or form helpful or in a positive direction. Could be folding laundry, could be something totally unrelated. It could be cleaning. It could be ideally something that is in service of the negative story you are telling yourself. So, for example, I used to walk out the front door and listen to a podcast, a self-help podcast, and just walk until that rumination just started to get drowned out. And if it wasn't drowned out, I would do another thing. And again and again and again and again, as a way to like block the train of thought. Fear is it takes so many different forms, but in general, what we tend to do as kids when we are in a powerless state, a fear state, is we start to try and control it. We control it by telling ourselves stories, really elaborate stories about why things are the way they are and why people are the way they are and what's wrong with life. And we think in that act that we are somehow becoming masters of the fear or the source of the fear or the source of the powerlessness. But all of that, unfortunately, is false. It's the reaction of a kid that feels really, really uncomfortable in fear. So, in all of this, what I'm describing, mindfulness is very important. And just to be able to be mindful of the state that your brain is in and notice what's happening and observe when you're going into that fear state, you're going into that controlling state, and also being able to calm your body so you're not in that fight or flight state. As soon as we are triggered, that's when we get small. As soon as we are triggered, we close off and we defend and we, what I call pedestal, we make ourselves taller than other people, better than other people, or we make ourselves smaller than other people and we put them on a pedestal. We separate from others. We can't be intimate. We can't be close to others. So, mindfulness meaning just watch what your brain is doing. Notice the thoughts, the patterns of the thoughts that come up with for you. Notice when they're triggered, notice when your heart starts to race, and take just very, very simple steps to disengage it and go into a positive action in that moment. Part two, the why. This is a somewhat a tangent of a why. I don't know why this popped up for me, but I've been thinking a lot about the the fact that we abandon parts of ourselves because of pain of longing and pain of wanting something and something being so meaningful to us, so important to us that it feels hard to want it. And I think what has happened, at least in America, is we have this kind of dominant value scale that is based around money and net worth. And that has become almost a popular version of what we esteem culturally. And I've been thinking about that because if you think about like famous characters in, literature or film or history, it's like as soon as somebody is obsessed with money, they're like a primitive character. If you think about like, a Jane Austen novel, like a person or like a Nicholas and Nickleby kind of, like there's as soon as a person is like Scrooge, as soon as a person is obsessed with money, you're like, oh, they're like not very dimensional person. They're like in a very small version of life. They don't really get it. And I think in previous eras, it was very clear that your appreciation for art, for culture, your moral compass, your character, your education, your background, what you have created, what you have moved forward in the world, all of those things were way more valued and put in high esteem. And I think that the reason that money has become a popular value or perceived value is just like technology. I think it honestly is tied to the sifting of like what seems to appeal across all demographics is like, oh, this is a common thread, therefore it must be of value, it must be popular. I don't think that it's really that valuable or important to most people. I just think we've been like kind of taught that it is. So it's been reinforced in all of these mediums, in part because it's common. But I don't think that anybody really does value it truly in like a spiritual, meaningful way. It's almost like we've been like taught these lessons in like a repeated way where we're like, okay, that's what should be important. And I don't think it ever was really important to anybody. So all of that is to say, I just want you to tune into what you actually do judge other people's merits based upon from a values perspective. And I mean things like originality, artistic ability, their accomplishments, their reputation, how kind they are, how talented they are, how interesting they are, how cultured they are, their weirdness, their their character as is created by all of these other way more colorful, vibrant traits. And and notice that like there are these kind of like scales that seem to be popular or promoted that are related to wealth, but I don't think that most people care about those people or care about that, not care about those people, but you know what I mean. I don't think of it as a higher value than all of these other things I've been describing. So all that is to say, what has made you feel really attracted to certain people? And what is your measure of success? I want you to get more in touch with that concept because it can be kind of confusing. If you're in a system where certain things are talked about and popularized and reinforced, it's like you kind of get lost in it. You kind of think like, I guess everybody's into this. I should be too. But I'm guessing that there are other things to you that are way more meaningful. There's such value to art. There's such value to the experience of doing something you're passionate about, what it means to you to make it. It is so special and fabulous. And I think we forget the spiritual nature of process, of sharing ourselves with others, of sharing what we are passionate about with others, coming from the energy of love. And it when we have that energy of love in any process, it very much changes the outcome. It changes the output. It changes how that thing is received by others in all spheres. It alters the energy of everything surrounding that thing. I mean, I think that is just something that doesn't get enough publicity here, you know? I mean, there are like kind of niche pockets, but like in the grand scheme of systems, the environments that kind of affect and train your way of thinking, they seem to kind of reduce the importance of those things, of art and love and creation, passion for something very unique to you. So don't take that for granted, that factor. And the factor that is the system that you're existing within to numb you out. And I'm just inviting you to come home to your value system and think about what is really important to you. For me, I value art, I value creativity above all else, and kindness and love and compassion and inspiration. And but that's more important to me than math and spelling and testing. But that's not something that's affirmed by a lot of systems. And that is a culture, therefore, that I must foster in my own life, in my own home. And I have to create a sense of agency for my kids to feel like that matters, to create things of merit and from their own selves, and the importance of that and the value of that. So I share all that as a means to pass along to you that your values, the ones that are more true for you, are often not promoted or evident in the systems that you exist within. So just don't get blinded and indoctrinated into the undermining them or undervaluing them, because I don't think we have a society or a structure of media that highlights these things like they do in other countries or in stronger, more varied cultures. So I'm going in all directions here. That was part two, the why. And now we have part three, the how, the tools. But first, a brief word from our sponsors. Okay, the tools. First, the first tool for me is a game changer. I want you to do it in your journal, spend some time with it. It's called The Things We Lost Because We Thought We Had to. So, in your journal, just start to write a list of the things that you, at a moment in your life, chose to shut off. And maybe it was in childhood, maybe it was young adulthood, where you were really passionate about something. It was like a part of your life. And there was a moment where you said, ah, this is too inconvenient. Or, what am I, crazy? I shouldn't be doing this. Or, I don't have time to try and do this. And whatever it is, I just want you to recall whatever those things are. Main reason being, they are vital to our future happiness because they are actually true for us. Even if we chose not to pursue them or we stopped spending time on them, most of them were probably too painful to pursue because we loved them so much, or it was stressful to want something and not be able to get it. And that's why we let go of those things. So whatever it is, I want you to write a reject list, what were the stages of self? Some are kind of deeper reaching and how they affected you. For me, I had things like at some point in time I said to myself, I need to be a serious person. I need to be I need to reject this identity of being surrounded by privilege. I don't want to be a part of that. There were all of these kind of like powerful, conflicting values. They came from feeling like disdain for what they meant to other people or how they allowed other people to have access to things. Like they came from very conflicted places. And really, what it did was say, I'm going to discard a part of myself. I didn't see it as that at the time, though. So I rejected a lot of things that for me felt elite. I also rejected at a certain point in time popularity, the desire to be popular. I also rejected the idea of beauty and a desire to be beautiful. I also rejected the desire to be famous, the desire to write film. It was like it was all of those things were so they were so intense The desire was so intense, or it was so stressful to want those things that I just decided to discard it and say, no, I don't want that thing anymore. So I'm inviting you to look at those moments in your life, whatever they are, not to say that you didn't do those things for very good reasons. The reject moments are very healthy survival choices. Like they're not coming from a place of they're not happening by accident. It's probably happening because of real life factors that have forced that to happen. But they are moments of self-preservation. And as you do work on yourself, as you grow, as you become more grounded, more healthy, it's okay to look back into those areas and we can actually reconnect to these parts of ourselves and now celebrate them from a much different place. We can recall these little gems, these parts of ourselves, and see that, like, oh, that is me. And that is something good. It's not something to be cast aside. How can I now reintegrate this part of myself, this identity, and feel proud of it? How can it not be a threat, a longing, a lack, a need, a fear? And how can it now be just simply a truth of the fabric of who I am? And the majority of the moments, I think, when we let go of something, we blocked something, we said, I don't want that anymore, I think is just fear of loss. So, another way I think you can look into this reject list is any places in your life, any parts of yourself currently where you feel intense jealousy, where you feel resent and kind of either jealousy towards somebody else and their situation, or a feeling of like disdain for somebody else in their situation, where you're like, they shouldn't have that thing. They don't deserve to be blank. And I don't think they should have XYZ positive outcome. So that is a journal entry I would love for you to explore. Just see what comes up, even if some things feel a little bit vague or gray. And the main outcome, I would say, from this list is to look at what is a positive on that list that maybe I can start to foster and bring back forth into my life today. Where is something that maybe doesn't have to take over my whole life? Maybe I don't have to like quit my job and join a Peace Corps or whatever the thing is, but maybe it can become a present, consistent, small piece of your identity that is now a good thing you share with other people, or you talk about, or you support, or you now visit in your day to day. All right, the next tool, rage stage. I've just put this in here because I think it's somewhat related to reclaiming parts of ourselves. When we are harboring anger toward loved ones, it is often a sign of healing. And I think for a lot of people, it is really conflicting and scary and guilt. It causes us a lot of guilt to feel anger toward people that we care about a lot. We think, but I don't want to hurt them and I shouldn't be mad at them and I shouldn't feel activated by them. They love me. They're not doing anything. We start to tell ourselves stories to rationalize why we shouldn't feel that way. And often when we're in a stage of healing from past wounds, a lot of which are created by bad boundaries and overstepped boundaries, we start to grow healthy scarring. And then when people kind of violate that scar tissue and they break it open, we get activated, we get angry. So when you start to feel that anger, notice it as this is my body starting to regrow boundaries and it's starting to define where the boundaries are. And it's just a necessary middle stage of healing. So, what does healed look like? Healed looks like really firm, emotionless boundaries, meaning they're not good, they're not bad, they just are. We don't have any tension around them, we don't have any guilt around them. They just are like a wall, they just exist. We don't have to judge them. We don't have to judge ourselves. We don't have to judge other people. But before we can get there, we become very overly sensitive to certain things and often angry. And I think to truly go through to that healed, boundaried, healthy system, we have to have that middle stage where we are just intolerant and we're like, no, you cannot do this. Like, I will not allow that thing. That's okay. And so don't be mad at yourself. Don't feel guilty. Recognize what's happening is I'm getting a little healthier. I'm starting to individuate. I'm starting to organically grow to the place where I actually ultimately belong. That's like your perfect form. Carl Jung has a quote that's like, you cannot teach a horse its hoarseness, I think is the quote. And that's kind of like people. Individuation, the process of individuation is to grow into your whole self. Like the oak seed potential inside of you is to eventually grow into a fully individuated, boundaried person. It's like it is your birthright, I will say. All right. The next tool, define your intention. This is kind of what I touched upon before, but I would love for you to write it in your journal. Just journal upon the idea of what is your role in this world? How do you define yourself? And how do you intend to be? Do you have the agency to come from that position? And if not, where are you being triggered and where are you kind of being activated into losing sight of that identity or abandoning that identity? We're either being triggered by fear or we're being triggered by anger, defensiveness, activation, like as in threat state. So just look at that, those two things. I think when you are a person who is exhausted often, you have a lot of roles that you play in your life, you will find that you have no access to being embodied in the role. You don't have choice. You don't have agency just because you are constantly in that fear, threat, primitive state because of just pure lack of blood glucose. So that is the most important factor in the way your life is going forth. It's not like, well, I'm a bad person and oh, I should be working on my no, there's a resourcing issue that needs to be solved. You need to reorganize the system surrounding the outcome. So, when you have a resource, then we can actually be we have agency to choose how to be. We can have a choice in a reactive moment. All right, the next tool, a mantra. Do good things and don't tell anyone. I think one thing that happens a lot is when we get into the ego, when we get into that really that longing, needy persona that's like put upon and nobody loves me and lack and I don't have enough blank and that narrative, that identity in your brain has defines everything from a perspective of lack, of not enough. It's like a very scarcity based persona. And so if you are in that state, if you're in that, it's usually paired with energetic depletion, exhaustion. But as soon as you notice yourself going into that lack, woe is me, victim narrative, we will define all of our positive acts, all of our gifts from this perspective of as well. So suddenly gifts that are like very genuine and wonderful because of this little narrative, they become, well, they didn't say thank you to me. Well, nobody appreciated it enough. They become like unspoken bartering situations. So you're in that role, in that mindset, you're actually creating the deficit. It didn't exist before that perspective, before that narrative came into play. So this mantra is really just a reminder if you are in the tit for tat perspective and you're in the victim role, stop and recognize like, oh, something in my energy is not whole. That's not actually me. That's not my goal. That's not my North Star. I'm not coming from positive, loving actions. I'm not coming from wholeness. I'm not coming from selflessness. If you have ended up there, it's like a check engine light. Just check yourself. How can I come back to a sense of completeness? How can I remember that I need nothing, that I am wholly myself? I am boundless love. It's kind of like a flip of your mind. It's like as soon as you're in that, like, when I'm hurt, it's energy, it's a perspective that needs to be fixed. Because so much of our story about our lives and about other people in our lives is generated by the victim narrative. Well, I did all of those things and you didn't do anything. And nobody said thank you. And da, da, da. Like that story, if you can flip it, it becomes an expansive world. And there's, when people can feel the love, you're creating space for them to give love back. It's very powerful to change this perspective. And it doesn't feel like in the moment you might not feel like you have access to it. So it kind of comes about in the form of a memory. You'd be like, wait a minute, I remember that there's another way to see the world that's actually more true. So it's like kind of like take a crowbar to the thought, the narrative of thoughts of like I'm sad because of blank blank blank. You take a crowbar to that and unpeel it, and suddenly like you remember a different reality is true. All right. The next tool is an intuition visualization. I think I got this from a mindfulness book that I'm reading recently called Full Catastrophe Living. If I didn't get it from that, I'll remember eventually and I'll bring it up on a future episode. But it is a way to really enhance your intuition and feel more open to receiving connection to other people, powers, guides, all of that stuff. So you get, first of all, meditate, get into a meditative state, and you imagine yourself as a wide open vase. So imagine your mind is like a wide open vase, open and receptive. And then imagine on the bottom of your body, your feet, if you're wearing, imagine you're wearing a giant skirt, like a tree shaped skirt. And that is all rooted deeply into the ground. And like maybe you want to actually visualize yourself as your favorite tree. So you're rooted deeply and you're also wide open to any positive, loving forces. I wanted to pass this along. This is a meditation I've been doing at night, and I find it to be pretty cool. I'm definitely getting like more in tune. That was that tool. All right, the next tool, make some noise. I put this in here because I do creative work, and one thing that has been a process for me growing over the last 10 years is noise, making noise. We are so quiet. And that is because we are taught to sit still. We are taught to be quiet. We're taught to stay in line. We are taught to not yell, not be weird, not act out, not interrupt, not be vocal. That is less appropriate, less professional, less masculine, less feminine, less whatever, threatening. And so we don't feel comfortable making sound. And by sound, I mean like actual nonsensical, weird sound, expressive sound. And that's something that I've just noticed like that my volume or my expressive sound has been like kind of trapped in my body. And if that feels like it's true for you too, I wanted to highlight that to you and invite you to start small and simple, but when you're alone, maybe in your car or maybe in the shower, whatever it is, start to just make weird sounds and see if you can get it out of your body. The reason I wanted to invite you to do this is just to feel more embodied, more at home, more safe with you, feel more childlike, more alive, more allowed to be imperfect, to be exposed, to not be so reactive to ourselves. You might find that that's a very hard practice. I found it to be a very hard practice at the beginning, and I've gotten a lot better at it, but fuck, it's taken a long time. Okay. The next tool, touch points of joy. I've put in this in pat I've put this in past episodes, but I do think it's very, very powerful. There are a lot of things that we correct in our environment and we clean up and we sterilize and we make look perfect and we make look like a photo from a social media post or whatever it is. But if you can have sacred objects around you, they very much feed into your psyche in a very grounding, positive way. They bring forth the life inside of you. So if you can just collect objects that feel so beautiful and meaningful and visceral to you, it goes so far. And I know a lot of people have a hard time allowing themselves to get things like that because it feels frivolous and stupid or it doesn't feel worth it. It goes so far. So I'm talking about like a tea towel that has a print from an artist you love, or a tiny trinket, or a very specific tropical fish. I don't know, whatever the thing is. Place import on the sacred objects that you surround yourself with, and especially ones that have some sort of resonance for you of a historical nature. And know that they're so pleasing to just have in your environment. They don't have to be big, they don't have to be expensive. They're so rewarding to just surround yourself with color. All right, the next tool, you are what you act. This is a check-in to keep yourself conscious. It's not like something to make you feel bad or feel guilty, but at night, one thing I invite you to do, just as a way to stay aware, stay at the wheel of who you are and who you choose to be, do a review of your day, a light review, and ask yourself, did I show up ethically today in who I choose to be energetically? Did I create the energy I choose to create in others today? And if something doesn't sit right, just take note of it, observe it, and think about, how do I want to correct that tomorrow? How do I want to improve it? Just review it and take note of it and know that it is in progress. And don't go into the masturbation, meaning like the rumination loops of like, well, I really suck and I can't believe it. We don't want to masturbate unless you really are just, kind of masturbate. But I mean, like, if you have a thing you want to change, go into just a little, inventory. I found that it allows me to remember more readily the next day how I want to alter the way I show up anywhere. And when we have something that's sticking, we can't seem to correct, and we get upset at ourselves again and again, usually that's a sign that there's a structure or a system set up that's making it impossible for you to change. So that's when you got to start looking at like the factors that lead up to that thing and how can you be really accountable and responsible in making a change that allows you to not be trapped in reactivity. So this is really just be present, be conscious, know who you are, remember to be that person. Just take note of the change you want to make. Look at the conditions and think about this almost like in third person. You can think about it like you're examining the facts of what has occurred. Like what sustained this situation? What made it go wrong? How can it be altered in the future? And the last tool I have for you, converse about what is reclaimed. This is a weird one, but the way to actualize the reject list is reclamation, like to actually claim it, be proud of it, talk about it, tell stories about it. If there was a thing you used to want to be that you are now reclaiming, bring it up in your next conversation with a friend. Talk about it. Tell a story about it. Romance about a project you want to pursue. Buy a book on a topic that's related to the thing. Think on what is now true for you? What is actually a definer for you? Be outlandish in the area you are venturing into. It might feel not true for the moment, like at the beginning. It'll feel a little bit like, I don't know if this really fits me. I feel a little bit like an imposter. And then that goes away within a few months. And just talk about it, embody it, tell stories about it, allow it to be present in your life, like a loved one you just got contact with. So those are my tools. I hope this is helpful. I hope you reclaim something about yourself. And I don't have a closing for this other than to say art and self-expression and where we feel love, where we feel energy, where we feel excitement, curiosity, those things are, in my opinion, the most worthy pursuits of life. And those things, when you share it with other people, it just activates people on such a different level. It's so engaging and so exciting. It's so interesting. It's of such value culturally. Not a lot of people remember to pursue those things because they're not really celebrated on a mass scale. But the more you start to seek them out in others, then the more you start to share that with others, like the more rewards everybody gets. And I feel we need more of that. We need to remember that that is so important and valuable in the world. And I want everyone to have that ability and everyone to have that gift. So I hope you have something you care about that's so interesting and weird and cool that you'll have some time to embellish today. I send you my love, and don't forget to smile.